What is going on, dudes? Lady dudes, welcome back to Just Nuts Guys. Today, I've got a new video for you talking about the structure deck that just got announced yesterday, Charmers, or Familiar Possessed, or whatever the actual name of the deck is. We've got a structure deck announced for it, not just Sacred Beasts, not just Shaddolls, but actually the third place deck in that structure deck vote in the OCG. Charmers is getting its own structure deck. Which is really hype. A lot of people love the lore / the card art and designs of these cards, and so I think it'd be really cool to give those fans a rounded out full archetype that actually works as a deck. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about everything the deck has up until this point, and then at the end I'll throw in a couple of little thoughts on like what I think the deck needs to be a deck, because you'll see the problems, but yeah, it's just not a real deck at this point. It just doesn't work cohesively and do its own thing. So yeah, let's get started with the main monsters. I guess this is like the first of them. We have the familiar possessed forms of all of our girls here. You have Asa, the Earth Charmer, Lina, which is light, Dark, which is dark, Wind, which is wind, Hita, which is fire, and Area, which is water. They all correspond in pretty much every form of card they have in this deck. There's one corresponding to each attribute, and each girl has their own attribute, right? They all correspond to their own one, which is pretty cool. All of these monsters have like similar effects, but they're not exactly the same. They all say like, they're all really weird. This is a really weird effect, by the way. They say if they're like in hand or deck, you can send like let's use Area, for example, the Water Charmer. Area would say you can send one Area the Water Charmer and a water monster from field to the graveyard to special summon this card from hand or deck, and if you do, it usually searches some kind of card. They search different stuff. It's not always, some of them I know, like one of them just searches like a 1500 or lower defense dark monster. I think that's what dark does. Or no, dark searches a level 3 or 4 light spellcaster monster. So like that's really weird. Like what they search ends up being really weird. And then if they are special summoned by their own effect this way, they deal piercing. They're 1850, which is actually pretty good like mark to hit for level 4s. But those effects just like don't come up. Like you don't want to trade that because the deck doesn't have like great special summoning ability. So like you're going to trade 2 monsters on board that you already got on board for one of these and then a search. And then a lot of times the search isn't even going to be able to get on field that turn. It just seems super, super iffy. I could see maybe if they put like the perfect support cards, maybe these cards could come up with their effects. But other than that, I don't really see it. But the beat stick aspect is nice. And, you know, we'll get to more of that later. Next up, we have the Charmers, the little Charmers. These are what I was talking to with the Area example. She would go into, you would need to have Area, the Water Charmer, on board. If you do not know, these are all flip monsters. They have the same exact stat line at 500, 1500, which is very weak. But they all have the same flip effect corresponding to their own attribute that says, on flip, you can take control of one monster that they correspond to. So Dark right here at the bottom corner, she steals a dark monster, Asa steals an earth, Area steals a water, whatever corresponds to their attribute. You can take control of one correctly attributed monster your opponent controls while this card remains face up on the field. If they are able to clear this card, it works like Crackdown. They would be able to get their monster back. They're cool, they're spicy, but they're really easy to get over. They are not big monsters at all, and it has to be specific to the attribute of the monster you're trying to steal. And yeah, it's a flip effect, so it's very slow, and it's not like Subtears. We don't have cards in this deck that like help turbo your flip effects. Like if there were cards that could turbo like set these and flip them in the same turn, you essentially just have walking mind controls, which would be interesting if they could do that right. But still, just so easy to work around in a lot of different ways. So they're cool, but I don't think they do enough for sure. Next up, we have the cataclysmic grown-up forms of at least the elementals. So I consider Earth, Water, Fire, I say Earth, Water, Fire, and Earth, Water, Fire, and Wind, to be the 4 elementals. I don't consider Light and Dark to be elementals, but like elements, but like these at least work. So they have one of each of these, so they don't have a Light and a Dark. They pretty much do the same thing as well. They say, corresponding to their own attribute, once per turn you contribute an Earth monster, except this card to special summon an Earth monster from your hand, and the monster is special summoned by this effect. If the special summon monster by this effect is destroyed, I'm reading it wrong. I'm sorry, I was totally confused. The monster gets destroyed if this guy leaves the field. So if Asa specialed an Earth monster from hand, if Asa left the field, the monster would be destroyed as well. So again, kind of working like Crackdown, which means they're very easy to work around because, again, they're level 4, but for some reason they made them with complete booty stats, 800 attack, 1500 defense. You got to attribute a monster on field. Other than them, you have to put another monster on field that's the same attribute as them. Just attribute them to get another card out of the hand with the same attribute. It seems it's so minus, and then like that way to out it, your opponent has like so many, like an avenue to like out it super easily, and then just leave you with like no monsters on board. Really, really brutal. These cards are not very good in my opinion. Then we move to these cards. These are actually some of the better cards, I believe, in the deck. I actually think these cards give the deck more promise than a lot of the other cards. These are your extenders. These are the familiars. These are the grown-up versions of the little creatures you see in like the familiar possessed artwork and the charmer artwork. Yeah, and it's for the elementals only. There's not a light and there's not a dark version. They all have the same exact first effect that says you can only control one of each copy, which is fine because you actually can special summon them more than once per turn with their special summon effect. So you could just special one, like link it off, make it exceed, and then special another one if you still meet the requirements for it. The requirements is all you have to do is control spellcaster, and you can just special summon them from your hand. Pretty easy. Almost every single charmer card is a spellcaster in this deck. You run a ton of spellcasters, so these are super easy to just jump on board with a 400 attack or 400 or level 4 monster with 1500 attack. 1500 is not that great, but like they all float. And then they all have a destruction float. So Inari Fire says, like, I believe on the next standby phase, after this card was destroyed by a card effect, you can just special summon it. Gigabyte, when he's destroyed, just straight up special summons another monster with 1500 and attack, 200 defense straight from the deck. So Gigabyte goes straight into any of the other ones, which is really nice. Set up another piece of floating, or just a body. Nefarious Archfiend of Nefariousness says, once returned during your opponent's end phase, if this card is in the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, you special him back. So that's really good with like pairing with like Inari Fire or Gigabyte, or even possibly Ranryu, where like he's in grave, you pop an Inari Fire or a Gigabyte on field, he comes back, and then they also extend into another monster. Which is pretty cool. Like, Inari Fire just comes back on your standby, Gigabyte gets you whatever other one you wanted at that point, which is pretty good. It is. And then Ranryu is the same thing as Gigabyte, but instead of specialing from the deck, it special summons from the graveyard. So they all float, and they are just a quick, easy body on board. I think these are some of the higher potential cards in this deck, but I still don't think they're great cards. I think they're nice extenders if the archetype is rounded in a way where the extenders are like important and like help the deck do what it wants to do. But it's going to depend on what the support ends up being, whether or not these guys be as good as I think the potential they can have to help the deck. But they're nice. They're definitely nice. Next up, we move to these Cataclysmics. And one thing that's interesting is I actually didn't realize that this was technically part of this archetype. Like, when you look at these, you're like, what in these cards like makes you think that it's a Charmer card? I don't know. When I went on Yu-Gi-Oh! Fandom, it said that these were another form of like the Cataclysmic forms. I don't know. I still don't know if I even believe it's 100% true, but they're all interesting. They're all 2600 attack, 200 defense. They all say if like a card corresponding to their attribute, a monster is destroyed on your field by battle or an opponent's card effect, you special summon them and then do something. The wind one like places a set spell or trap card or any spell or trap card on the field back to the top of the deck, so that's kind of nice removal. The earth one lets you Foolish Burial any monster from deck to grave, which can be nice in the right archetype. Sunburner lets you inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the attack of one of the destroyed fire monsters that was destroyed before he specialed, and then I don't remember what the water wind does, but I think it's like kind of around the same realm. Like, they're all like fine, but they like rely on your opponent first off, and they rely on destruction, and they don't actually like disrupt. I guess like the wind one sort of disrupts, but like Foolish Burning doesn't disrupt your opponent. Like burning them doesn't actually disrupt them. Like bouncing a back row can, but it's not the best form of disruption. So none of them are actually like legitimately good in my eyes. So I'm not really that worried about them. And then we move to the spell and trap cards. There's really only one of each. They're okay. They're continuous cards, but yeah. So we'll start with Unpossessed the Trap because the other one is We don't know what it is yet. Oh, I'm missing one. I gotta find that in a sec. Okay, so Unpossessed here. Unpossessed here says charmer monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. So it's only charmers. So it's not the familiar possessed, but it does mean your links are indestructible by battle, as well as like the little ones. Anything that has charmer in the name. Which is fine. That's not the greatest protection, but it can be nice. Make it awkward for your opponent. The second effect says if a familiar possessed monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, so you have to be attacking, it'll gain 800 attack during damage calculation. That makes all your familiar possessed monsters at least 2650, which is actually a pretty big benchmark. So that actually is kind of nice. And then the last effect is probably the most important one. If a monster, any monster you control, is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy it yourself, your opponent can destroy it. You could special summon any spellcaster with 1500 defense straight from the deck whose attribute is different from at least one of the monsters that was destroyed on the field, in attack position or face down defense position. So you can also special summon the charmers face down to flip them up to take a monster your opponent controls, which is also kind of nice there. You can only use that effect once per turn, so you can't just like get popped, special, get popped, special, get popped, special. You can't keep doing that. But you do get one per turn, which is actually pretty nice. It is destruction floating, but it's okay. It does let you go into like almost any other card in the deck, which is pretty nice. And then it says anything with 500, a spellcaster with 500, so that gives you an idea. Any of these are 500 defense, any of these are 500 defense, 1500. And same thing with this one. So that's actually a really helpful card. I think it might be powercraft in just how good it actually is. There's so much, like, a lot of decks have like such good removal that like I don't know how good this card even really is. But yeah. And then the other one is another continuous, but it's a spell. It says all monsters you control gain 300 attack for each different attribute monster you control. So if you control two, they'll both gain 600, assuming they're different attributes, which is pretty good. I mean, the familiar possessed immediately will be 2450, and then as that gets further and further, they could easily be cracking 3050, and that's actually pretty legitimate. The other effects say charmer and familiar possessed monster you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, period. Not at all, which is interesting. And then the last effect, if a spellcaster monster whose original attack is 1850 is normal or special summoned to your field, draw one card. That's a hard once per turn, but if you just open this with any familiar possessed monster, they're all 1850, then this card immediately just gets you a draw. It immediately replaces itself at the very least, then you have the protection, and then you have the little boost. And then the longer it stays on the field, every turn, hopefully, at least every one of your turns, you're getting a free draw, which is actually pretty nice. So I think this card's okay. I think they're both okay. I don't think they're great, but I do think they're fine support cards. The deck just needs more like engine stuff. The deck doesn't even like have an engine. You just have like a fallback as far as like floating and stuff. That's all you have. So the deck definitely needs a more powerful engine to get it to what it wants to get to. And I think part of what it wants to get to is these. Your charmer link monsters. So we have the elementals again, no dark and no light, which is actually super important because those are probably the two best ones, but these are still pretty good. So if you don't know what all these do, we've seen these in the meta actually. These are actually meta relevant cards in my opinion. They're link 2s and they're pretty generic. They take any two monsters as long as one of them is their attribute. So also takes any two monsters as long as one's an earth, as long as one's a water for area, as long as one's a fire for Hita, and as long as one's a wind for wind, you can go into them. They have a once per turn effect that says you can target an earth monster or whatever corresponding attribute your opponent has in their graveyard and actually revive it to your field. Then, then they also have a float effect. If any of them are destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, they can let you search any monster of their attribute from your deck to your hand with 1500 or less defense, which is pretty generically good search. Like, it's a pretty good float. I mean, like, seriously, these cards are awesome. They're 1850 beat sticks. They get a free monster out of your opponent's grave, assuming they have one of the right attribute, and depending on the engine. This is one of the things I'm hoping for the most out of this like support, is that we get some way to just like super easily get to whatever one of these we want, so that if we're playing against any deck that plays earths, waters, fires, winds, we have no problem getting to something in our opponent's graveyard, whether it's just like a free extra monster on board for playing beatdown, or if it's something legitimate. I mean, also could just revive like a like a Pancratops, or if you were able to ever out, I don't know, any big like link that's like fire, water, wind, or earth. just revive it. Link 2 or Link 3, Link 4 even. If you can out it and you can revive it, then you can put the pressure back on your opponent again, and then like stuff like that. So, and especially if the dark and light one come out, like this becomes even more of a thing. But yeah, these are really good. This is like this plus the extenders, the familiars, are probably like the two I have the most interest in terms of like where I think they need to build the deck around, because these are really strong. These cards are definitely strong for sure. But I think they would definitely like to have a boss monster, like maybe a Link 3 or 4 that's like a legitimate boss monster, and you could use these to like take something from your opponent's grave and then link up into it, and then like that monster, if it was legit, could be like a win condition. That would be really, really cool. Or if they give like, I don't, here's the thing is that it's a structure deck, so they can't give them a million cards. They like at max they may get 10 new cards, and that's super optimistic because most structure decks they get around 6 to 7 new cards. Those extra 3 definitely are needed. And yeah, oh, one other thing is I totally forgot to throw the medium in here. Hold on, let me grab her real quick. Sorry, is this girl right here. So this is also another card that got revealed not too long ago. We only got her revealed, so only got the wind one, but we haven't gotten any of the other attributes. So wind, or at least the wind one, this is called Win the Wind Medium. So this is a medium monster. It says you can discard this card and a wind monster, so it has to be the same attribute, assuming the other ones get a form like this, to add any monster of the same attribute with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, except Win the Wind Medium. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate monster effects except that attribute. So she locks you into winds, the other ones would probably lock you into their attribute. You see that? And the last effect, when a wind monster is destroyed by battle only, not card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can only use each effect once per turn. I think the search ability is actually kind of interesting. I think this could almost be like splashable cards in like archetypes, like straight up, but like, they have to be destroyed by battle to get this out of your hand. That seems so bad. And it's level 5. That's the other thing. It can't even be normal summoned. It is still 1850 and 1500, so it does fit with like some of the other support cards, and it is more modern for like how the card works. You know what I mean? It searches, just generically searches as like a potential card to your hand. I think this card is fine. I think these could almost be better in like other decks than like the Familiar Possessed deck, but I'm curious to see what else we get here. I mean, pretty much the deck just needs something to solidify. Like I said, I think the links are something the deck definitely needs to focus around, as well as the familiars. I think the familiars are pretty good. They float on destruction, so it forces your opponent to out them with like non-destruction effects if they don't want you to float. And yeah, I think the deck needs a way to solidify around that. Maybe like a boss monster, a link boss monster that like the charmer links can get you into by taking stuff from your opponent's graveyard, as well as maybe like a new set of main deck monsters. Because like when you literally go through the main deck monsters, you're literally, whoa, I forgot that this wasn't that. Okay, when you literally, so here's my problem, is when you go through the main deck monsters, you're literally like, these essentially vanillas. These very bad flip monsters. These not good monsters, not even beaters, nothing. These are like unplayable completely. And these are just the nicest centers. So like when you look, and these are like too reliant on like destruction and all that stuff. So like when you look at this, like the deck just doesn't have main deck monsters that do much. So they might just need to do one more set of like one of each, one for each attribute, a new main deck monster for them that actually is just more modern. It can actually work, do something. They just don't do anything there. And if they want, it depends how they want to go, because they could do it where they want to keep these to be a part of the deck, and so maybe they build around these and just give these so much support. Maybe even that the fact that they're essentially just vanillas on field is fine because they have so much support. It just depends on what that support is, and they need some really, really busted cards. But yeah, I think that's mostly it. I know this video is kind of long, but they have a ton of cards. Sorry it took so long. They have just so many cards like in this archetype that I really wanted to get through, and I also had my thoughts on this. I think the deck has potential. I do. I think every deck more or less has potential, but I think because of the links, if the links never existed, I would say screw it. Just don't even do a Charmer structure. Like, there's no way. You'd have to make 20 new cards. But because of the links, I do think there is potential there. I really do. So we'll see. We'll see where we go from here. Definitely let me know your guys' thoughts down below if you made it this far. Definitely know what Let me know what you think they need. Like what they need to just be a deck that does stuff. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be competitive. I just want even possibly just like a deck that just does things that like works, and it's not just normal summon set for back row, which is like vanilla is like so bad, right? So let me know your guys' thoughts down below. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Again, apologies for this video being so long, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.